is pre-existing We Energies utility wire. Okay? Where does fishing line come into the picture? In those areas where you don't have a cliff wall. You don't have, like we have here in Shorewood along the entire lake, we have the deep, what's the word for it? The cliff wall leading into Lake Michigan. Not the break wall. I'm talking about the cliff wall, literally behind the homes. The bluff, that's what I was talking about, thank you. So you have the bluff. You have all these natural wall that constitute wall according to Jewish law. How much adjustment do you need to make? In most cases, the average Eruv in the United States of America, in terms of adjustment, the statistics are between 5 and 15% of the enclosure needs to be adjusted. What's the adjustment? In some cases, the easiest and simplest way to do it is go to the utility company and say, look, we need to take this 200-yard section and we need to put in a little bit of utility wire in order to complete our enclosure. So what do? We pay the utility company, and whichever contractor they use, we put in poles which are exactly up to code to whatever they're using already. We put up wire that looks exactly like utility wire, and guess what? Nobody has any idea. Because it's not designed to be a sign or a display. And going back to the words you used over here in the language over here, so the Eruv is intended to be non-visible. By the way, what's the reason for this? A very technical reason. Nobody wants it to be vandalized. Nobody wants anyone else to know where the Eruv is. Okay? So you would have no idea if you walked around Sherman Park. Any one of the municipalities in our county and further that have an Eruv, I promise you, I challenge you, you would have no idea what you're looking at. You would have no idea what an Eruv is.
So it's not a structure. What you're saying is it's not a structure. It's not a sign.
What I'm saying is in many cases it's possible that the Eruv doesn't need any additional structure whatsoever. We're taking advantage of pre-existing infrastructure. We're paying a nominal $1 fee to the municipality for the rights to use it for our religious use, to be considered an enclosure according to Jewish law, thus enabling us to walk outside carrying things. We could take our babies to synagogue on Saturday morning instead of mothers being stuck at home. We're able to bring a bottle of wine over to our friends when we're invited for Shabbat dinner. It just makes life easier for us in a way that has absolutely no bearing on anybody whatsoever. The east side, we have a specific issue which we deal with because Lake Park is a bird sanctuary, so there's concern over how to go about doing it in the right way, and because the east side doesn't have the same amount of wire as other communities. So we have a specific issue that we're dealing with in order to make it work. Okay? But to say that an Eruv is a religious display, is a religious display that will offend somebody, is ridiculous because no one is supposed to see it, and not only that, nobody sees it. And I'll tell anybody who thinks that they'll be offended by it, when the Eruv goes up, you won't know it. You will look for it and you won't see it. It's not a visible thing whatsoever. So that just to get that out of the way, in terms of offending, the goal is not to offend people when they see something which is of a different religion. For an Eruv, this is zero concern whatsoever. It is exactly opposite to the way the Eruv is supposed to function. That's number one. I'm sorry I'm going long with it over here. I do this for a living.
It's just, I want to tell you that I appreciate that point. I know you have another one. I can hear you.
I've got it.
Okay,
Yes.
just to clarify though, it is, you're getting to the point that I think we talked about tonight, which is what is included in that religious symbol.
100%.
Okay, so continue.
And I'm just going over here. Signs, symbols, or communicated structures. I think we have to. Now, the second thing I want to say is, and this is really to the attorney, to the village attorney. You know, we talked up here about you have an agenda that the village shouldn't get sued, right? The folks from the committee have an agenda to make Shorewood inclusive and non-offensive. To me, those two things clash. Okay. And you guys can figure it out and break your heads, and I have a feeling that in 7 years we'll be back here talking about the same things, unresolved. Okay? Why? For a very simple reason, because the minute you start to, remember how Obamacare started off as like a 2-page memo, and ended up being 2,400 pages long? Okay? I have a feeling we're going down the same route. Okay? Now, if that's the intent of the village, in Yiddish we say, knock yourselves out. Okay? Listen, it's a free country, you guys can do whatever you want. Again, I personally, on a personal note, I concur with Richard, who already walked out, that, well?
I was just going to say that it sounds like you guys agree.
Sure. So I personally agree with him. That's not relevant. I personally agree that by limiting expression is not really showing inclusivity. Listen, I grew up in New York. New York City public schools are represented by 188 countries around the world. Now the UN, I believe, only has about 207 countries. So you're talking 90% of the countries and cultures around the world are represented. You have kids coming to public schools in New York with every kind of rag you can possibly think of, representing their culture, their faith, their country, their food. And yes, walking by an Indian establishment that I don't appreciate the smell, I may be offended. Does that mean that I tell the Indian person that you can't have your restaurant emitting smell onto my street because it's going to smell for me? No, I smiled and I walked by and I said, listen, this is one restaurant I'm not going to eat in. Will I, that's my personal attitude. In my work, I behave the same way. I dress publicly as a Jew, and I'm proud of it. And I hope that other people of other faiths have the same comfort in the security of this country, that they feel comfortable walking around the way their faith dictates. And if they don't, that's where the problem starts. The problem starts if we're not comfortable enough standing up for what we stand up for. Now again, I'm not getting into the question over how the village has to address it, that's really a legal question, etc. I'm talking about the attitude from the beginning has to be different. The attitude from the beginning needs to be that every single person in this country has to have the feeling that they can walk down the street, they can behave, they can express themselves, and feel comfortable about it. Because if not, like Richard said, 250 years ago when the founding fathers came over here, they didn't have in mind that every person should walk down the street and think 3 times who they're offending. They thought you should be able to walk by us, for us, the people, vested in the power of the government, should create a safe space for everybody. Okay? And if we move away from that, then, I don't know, we can move back to, I don't know, to Somalia, I don't know where we can go. Any other country. And I say this seriously, unrelated to recent comments by the president. It's unrelated. I'm just saying we can go back to any country in this world. There's a reason why our Constitution is around as the longest Constitution that's still surviving. There's a reason for it. And the reason for it is because we allow people to behave and to represent their faiths publicly and to express it publicly, etc. Just want to get the one more point out and finish pontificating him.
Okay, just keep it short. Okay, go ahead.
I will try. I don't keep it short for a living. It's not like I get paid for it.
I know. Neither do we, but we try.
I get paid to talk, and if I keep people awake when I talk, it's a bonus. The third point that I really want to say is that, and this goes back to me and my organization personally, and Richard may concur with me, may disagree, and that's okay. You know, it's a country where I can look you in the face and say I disagree with you and still smile, and that's why I live here in the United States of America, not where my father grew up in Soviet Russia. When the menorah, when this whole controversy initially blew up, and again, I think this is before the Human Rights Commission, or Human Rights, what's the name of the commission? Human Relations. I'm sorry. No, you see the initial HRC, you think you're coming from the UN, you're not sure where you're going. So when the controversy initially came up, it started a year ago, before the big event last year, okay, about a year ago, or less, 8 months ago, 9 months ago, whatever it was. And the woman who was in charge of the whatever it is, the propaganda, well, the communication is what I'm looking for, the communication for the bids and the holiday kickoff season, etc. A Jewish woman, she doesn't live in Shorewood, she lives in Whitefish Bay. She reached out to me and she says, do you guys have an extra menorah that you can provide for us? So I personally don't have any agenda here. I never applied for a permit to display anything. I don't have an agenda here. I don't live in Shorewood. Few members of my community do live in Shorewood, but not many. So she reached out to me and she asked if we can do it. This is 2 years ago. No problem. I provided them with the menorah, no controversy. A year later, all of a sudden I hear that there's debate about the menorah. Now, the question is, and again, this is a question that I'm going to ask, and I don't want to ask this of anybody personally because it's not a personal question, but it's a question we have to ask ourselves and say, at what point do we say that the people, the parties that are being affected by this should have a seat at the table? And I say this very, very simply. If somebody's going to have an agenda that they don't want to offend people, and they feel like religion, that is the target of offense in this country, then I think it's only fear, okay? And I say this maybe judiciously, maybe I'm giving myself too much credit, and I can acknowledge that. But maybe it's important that maybe people of the faith, especially if we're talking about specifically religious, we're talking about religious displays, maybe there's a possibility that some of the religious leaders in the city, or county, or whatever it is, maybe they should be invited to have a seat at the table, at least to give a little bit of input. I personally only found out about this item in the agenda from a reporter. I got a phone call from a reporter. What's your take about the Village of Shorewood's proposed motion for tonight? I said, hey, slow down. I have no idea, And again, it's not anybody's fault, obviously. I'm not blaming anybody. God forbid, it's nobody's fault. Nobody did anything wrong. There's rules, it's a notice, etc. What I'm saying is fundamentally, there are parties that are being affected here. For a few people to stand up and say, we're offended, I get it. But what are you offended by? You're offended by something? Have a conversation. Call up a rabbi, call up your local priest, call up your local imam and say, I'm offended by XYZ. Maybe you can explain to me why I shouldn't be offended by it. And if we do that, maybe we can avoid this whole show. Just putting it out there as a suggestion, and take it where you will. I do appreciate everyone's time for staying awake and listening to me. Thanks so much for taking this item seriously, and for giving me the attention it needs. And thank you for all your continued work on behalf of all these citizens of Shorewood. A wonderful evening. If anybody has questions, I'm willing to take, but only if you want.
Trustee Mata.
Yeah, I just want to clarify for the Rabbi, thank you for coming tonight, and it was great to hear you speak. The issue that came up last year, and I want to make sure you understand, it was not that somebody was offended by the menorah. I brought up the issue, okay? And I'm Jewish
So now I'm
myself.
offended that you brought it up.
I'm Jewish myself, and the reason I brought it up, and I want to tell you that
Sure.
I grew up in Squirrel Hill, about 4 or 5 blocks away from Tree of Life Synagogue. And the incident at Tree of Life had happened
Talk to the floor or the chair.
very
please.
recently. Well, I'm trying to explain to him.
But you're addressing to the board and.
Anyway, so that had just recently happened in very close to where I grew up. And my issue with it was that it was being lit on a day that was not actually Hanukkah. Okay, and.
It's like the Christmas tree lit up a month before Christmas, but that's
So
another
my point, the reason I brought it up, and truthfully, if I had to do it again, I wouldn't, okay? But the reason I brought it up was like, if we're gonna be inclusive, let's be inclusive. Like Hanukkah's not Jewish Christmas, it's a different holiday. Let's bring it up in a way that we are valuing and expressing what, something specific about the holiday. I felt it was a little bit like second thought, okay? So I just want you to understand, it wasn't that someone was offended by the menorah, it was more a different issue, okay?
Exactly. You see, this is the way to have a
We're
conversation.
going to stop comments right now, public comments, because we are now getting into personal conversations between two people. So,
I just wanted to explain to him
it's
what the
just protocol.
situation was, so we
I
did not have.
I think it's worth having that conversation
I
was
understand.
had at that time, that there was considerable.
Okay, I'm sorry. If just recognize to speak, you have to come to the podium. And I'm just trying to keep order. I'm responsible for keeping order in the chambers. So,
Apologies for
I respect
looking.
I respect, your order when it's your chambers, and you need to respect the board's order. So, thank you very much for your comments. Thank you for your explanation. Trustee Menta, is there anything else you wanted to express, Trustee Menta, to the board?
No.
Okay. Then we will continue comments from the board and then see if there's any other from the audience. Trustee Bachers.
I hate to belabor this, and it's getting late, but I do have, going back to the policy in our packet here, not the policy that the attorney has written. One of the questions is, so the rabbi I just mentioned, ceremony versus a sign. And I guess I'm going to throw into ceremony a festival, or perhaps a private event on public space, such as a street party that could be hosted by, let's just not picking on Three Lions, but let's say Three Lions wants to throw an event. Let's just say, like the Shorewood shenanigans. So does the way this policy is written, is it my understanding that you can't put any secular holiday themed decorations in the public buildings and spaces, even if it were for a short time?
Okay, and you can go ahead.
2,400 pages.
And have a seat, if you don't
Not a
mind.
joke.
And I'm referencing the fourth to last paragraph, and also the, I'm tired, the second to last paragraph, maybe even the third, so. And again, I'm also going to say a wedding ceremony, you can have, priest, or you can have cross, you can have a variety of different religious.
If you're permitting. So, Attorney, did you want to respond?
Well, I mean, that's a loaded question, there's a lot packed into that, but no, as long as, if someone wants to have a ceremony, have a wedding ceremony somewhere.
Or an event.
Park, an event, the parklet policy that we have, that goes in the right way. That's a different issue, that's activity-based, as you mentioned. And, as long as you're giving equal access and you're not discriminating in the way that you're allowing access to the public space, there's no issue with the establishment clause. There's no issue with access or equal protection.
What if they want to put a cross?
Well, yeah, it
I think
says,
is what she's saying.
it's the policy of the Village of Shorewood to not allow any person, organization, or group to display any religious or secular holiday themed decorations in public buildings and spaces. So is that an exemption from that?
I don't know that there's a definition. I didn't write the policy. I don't know.
Well, something to think about while you're drafting, is that right?
Yeah, that's fine, you don't need to answer it now. but just-
I don't think, is there a definition? I didn't see a definition. Oh, wait a minute, okay. It does say areas including but not limited to village-owned buildings and the associated parking lots, open spaces,
Open spaces.
and public arcade. There's no reference,
Well, open spaces.
there's no reference to parking.
A wedding is not a
Trustee
holiday.
Carpenter?
A wedding is not a holiday, so it's holiday.
Trustee Carpenter?
I just wanted to piggyback on what Trustee Menta was talking about last year, and I'll address it to you.
Or the floor.
Yes, so, I actually did feel like our experience with the tree and the menorah last year was what ended up being much more inclusive. I too am Jewish, and felt a similar sentiment to Trustee Menta. And we ended up working with MJDS and had bagels, and we had donuts, and, it really talked, that was our sentiment last year, was it did not feel like it felt like an afterthought, and that allowed us to do more and to have more discussion about what is Hanukkah about, and it is not the Jewish Christmas. And so, this policy is really just for public space and public land, and really allows for separation of church and state, which is something that, as a Jewish person, I really value, and I think is really important. Not speaking for every Jewish person, but so I do think that this is something that is really important for us as a community in our public space, and still allowing events, which is where our inclusivity as a community comes forward and really shines.
Okay. Thank you so much for that statement. Does anyone else have any comments from on the board? Did you have a short comment that you would like to say?
No, I just,
And just speak to the floor, please.
sure. Well, I also wanted to address that, this isn't a new conversation, that this was a conversation that was had last year, that it wasn't just a committee, it was a number of Jews in Shorewood who came together to say, yes, we want the menorah, and it is on private space, and therefore it is welcome there, and that we're talking about something different here, which is public property, like you said, separation of churches.
Excellent, thank you so much.
Can I get 30 seconds? 30 seconds, I promise. I just want to ask a hypothetical question. Hypothetically, if you were to take that menorah from where it was, just slightly too close to the building, and move it 5 feet out, would anybody walking by view it any differently? I guess public policy makes a fundamental difference. I'm not asking public policy why it's illegal. I'm saying from a walker by who's highlighting Hanukkah, would there be a difference whether it's between
Thank you.
or 5 feet out?
Yeah, thank you. And we did have that conversation on the fact that it just triggers more. We had a full conversation with the attorney that because you will allow on public, then you have to allow anything in that space. So absolutely, and maybe not to be anything more, but it does do other things. Okay, so are any other further discussion? Otherwise, I'm going to stop. Yes?
I do think the separation of church and state is really important. I think it's the key to protect everyone's right to express their religious beliefs in the community, not have a state sponsored or state endorsed religion. This is what I would like to see us achieve through this policy. Hopefully some type of sponsorship of state government or some religion.
Thank you, Councilman Lumber. We do have a motion and a second on the floor. Trustee Carpenter?
I'd like to call a question. Move to call.
Sure. I have one comment, but sorry. That's how it goes in your last. Okay, so we have a motion to call the question. Do we have a second?
Second.
Trustee Menta seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nay. Motion carries 6-1. So now we will take the motion.
Yep. To refer back to the HRC committee with assistance from the village attorney to finalize a draft policy for the next village board meeting on September 16th.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nay. I don't get to state why, so the motion carries 6-1. All right, thank you so much. Thank you for your comments. Thank you for your comments, and thanks to HRC representatives for being here so late tonight. Trustee Bachler.
Can I just make a comment?
Yeah.
I would say that 45 minutes, I mean, it's not my committee and I'm not on it, but I would, if we're gonna have the attorney there
Where?
at the HRC.
Oh, yeah, that's why I voted no.
45 minutes
Of course, I guess.
doesn't seem like it's gonna happen, but I could be mistaken. maybe, I don't know if we need to do anything.
Oh, I don't know. I was just gonna say thank you for, Viva, for joining the HRC.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Yes, and maybe I'll just put it on future items. Okay, so our next item on the agenda is
9E, consider ordinance 3005, repealing and replacing chapter 26 food relations by students under voting rights.
Tyler.
HRC made a recommendation to allow students to have voting rights. We do have one other committee that has voting rights for students, which is the Conservation Committee. So this would be consistent with some other committees that we have. We have 2 students right now that serve as ex officio members, which means that they're present and invited to the meetings, part of our subcommittees, but they don't have the ability to vote.
Okay.
I'd be happy to accept any questions.
Trustee Warren.
Tyler, I just noted, I noted that within the write-up, it said 2 student member attendance among the committees and difficult past due to this busy schedule. Do we anticipate difficulty establishing quorum by the these 2 board members?
It's always possible, especially with 2 of the 9 members being students. If you have some student or some school events that both are a part of that can't attend, you're down to 7. And if you have 3 that can't attend, that's not a quorum. So I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of the committees, or why initially we did that, but that's kind of the risk that's involved. At least the student members that we have now have had great attendance. Obviously, that's not a guarantee. But right now, I have no concerns about the current students we have in this commission.
Trustee McKay.
I think something, we do have an attendance policy, so if that were enacted or applied, if somebody was having attendance problems and that was applied, then, that person could be deemed inactive and then you find a quorum from the active members. So there could be ways that would be, that could be avoided also. I support this. One thing that came up is that it says that they have to be from Shorewood High School, and since our
Shorewood High School or Shorewood, I was going to ask that.
Shorewood High School. So since our commissions have a residency requirement, don't those 2 students just have to live in Shorewood, but I don't think that they would have to attend. I understand the intent, and I understand this was, already in there. But it just occurred to me that it seems a little unfair because all we expect of anyone else is to be a resident.
Can I, and to piggyback on my question, our Conservation Committee requires high school, but is there any other high school?
Well, it's funny you mentioned that. I did not think of this until now. One of the students that currently serves as an ex officio member is not a resident of Shorewood.
Right, I was just going to ask that question too.
Could they go to Shorewood schools?
They go to Shorewood High
But
School
they're not
because what we
resident.
did for the ex officio members reached out to Tim Kenny and helped select 2 students.
But it says you have to be a Shore resident to be a member.
Yeah, so that could be an issue for one of the students.
Trustee Bachers, then I'm asking.
Yeah, well, I guess I agree that I think we should either allow both, either a Shorewood High School student or a Shorewood student. Doesn't matter where you go to high school, you go to private school or whatnot, but you still bring value to the organization and you.
It's not what you're going towards the age,
Yeah,
the age.
you want the young mind.
That's a great point because the league actually addressed that in the chief executive workshop about how we need to involve our children more as a municipality. And that's a great question to throw to the board. It doesn't matter for middle school. I know that staff might have an opinion.
Well,
I'm just saying, or is it just high school? It doesn't mean it has to be Shorewood High. There's 2 separate.
Yeah, I guess I was thinking more, I guess you could open it up to middle school, but let's just keep it now for the high school students, just for
Just a high school
simplicity.
student.
Just, for me, I would say a high school student or a Shorewood High School student. And I don't know if there's some state statute or anything like that, but a Shorewood High School student, I'd be fine if they don't live in Shorewood, they go to Shorewood
But,
High.
correct, I agree.
I'd
Does
say,
that,
you
is
know,
that the
one
same
of
as
the
what you were
other.
saying?
The only problem is that we eliminated other people, like, there was a parent of the Shorewood student, there was a Shorewood district parent who wanted to serve on the Shorewood Recreation Advisory Board, and she was not allowed to serve because of her residency. So I would just, not to open up a can of worms, but I would just want to be consistent. So, I mean,
I think that can be done, though. We're opening up an ordinance, so trustee Bonhorst, just for the options here, if you are opening up the ordinance, it is a village ordinance, it's not state required. So if you wanted to strike the fact that a member cannot, it has to be a Shorewood resident, you can. Am I saying that correctly? If we
Yeah, you could
delete
say a
that-
resident, a student that's a resident of Shorewood,
Or you could-
or a Shorewood high school student.
I mean, could you just say that, like, does not have to be a Shorewood resident? You can say whatever you want in ordinance, there's no state statutes requiring anything. Trustee Warren.
Yeah, and you know, as someone who was a student who wasn't a Shorewood resident, yeah, I think this is something that we need to fix. I feel very strongly in that respect. You don't want to say to a certain segment of the Shorewood high school student body that they're not eligible for this honor. So I think that's a high priority for me to.
Okay.
We would want to knock them off the committees for that now.
So part of the motion, if one of the board members wants to offer that as an amendment.
I have more questions. Well, I was after trustee Buckford, and then I'll call on trustee McDade, if that's okay. Otherwise, someone might call the question and then I might say anything. So I also had a question about ex officio members. So I had 5 things that specifically, if we're going to open up the ordinance, what can we, make standard for all ordinances, but ex officio members don't only include high school students, they also include school board, village board representative, and it doesn't say whether the others can vote. And so if we're gonna specify that ex officio student members can vote, even if the others can't vote, then can we say that?
I think you could ask Nathan, but I think by definition, ex officio means non-voting member.
Yeah, that's not true. If you look at the league's publication, that's absolutely not true. So, and I promise, because they have, it's actually in the FAQs number like 7 or something, there's a question and then it's on their website,
But if you want to specify that they're non-voting, I mean, that
that'd
could
be really
be
great.
recommended.
The league recommends that when you say the word ex officio member, you
That's definitely
specify
what's
whether they're voting or
implied,
not.
just know that's what's implied when the ex officio was originally written. Yeah.
Correct, they were non-voting. If we could just, while we're opening up the ordinance, if we could just specify based on the recommendation, I think that would be very helpful. So it would say ex officio members would just be the school board, the village board, representative, a representative from the police, period. No up to school, and the school members would go into numbers. Is that what you're saying?
I think the amendment you're looking for, because I already proposed an amendment to do the student members with the rest of the members,
Yes.
voting members.
So just take it
So
out.
I think you would just put in non-voting ex officio members. So you need to include the words non-voting.
And you would have to cross out in C, correct? Maybe you already did over here. Yes, you did. And you just
Yeah,
crossed it out.
just
Okay.
add non-voting.
Thank you so much for
You're
doing that.
welcome.
And I just want to make sure the other 4 things were addressed. How long the terms were, ex officio members, they are all the same, correct? 3 years. It's helpful when we open up the ordinance to address.
It's whatever the rep organization or department does. So if the school district, well, right now it was Lance, but Pablo, I think it's now, if the school district decided Pablo to be it for
So
X
the
number
reason I
of
bring
years,
this
I
up is I
think
want to be
that's their
very
ability to
consistent
do
in
that.
the future when we make ordinances, that when we talk about commissions or committees, that we specify certain things. And one of the things that's very confusing, as the clerk and I are going through them all in the past, was how long can these people serve? And so, so I would like to defer this item until we can, I would like to say it tonight, but I can see there's some trustees that are
Yeah,
tired.
I would like to suggest that you and Tyler get together, discuss whatever their concerns are, and bring it back to our next meeting. But I do think we have an issue because you phrased it as student members determined by the Shorewood High School. So you're gonna have to reword that. Right, because we're not just, because it could be somebody who goes to a different high school, but who lives in Shorewood.
With what you're proposing, you would have to change the process.
Yeah.
Where when you open it up in
That's why they're ex officio.
February, you would have to open up for students to apply and then they're decided that way. So
Yeah,
if you were to do that, you would get rid of that language in Shorewood High School.
I mean, in some ways it's simpler just to keep it the high school, at the high school.
Well, you could, on the beginning of B, you just say non-student members must be Shorewood residents. That then students are just need to be,
That's true.
or students.
But then we're I mean, it's, the way it worked this year is the principal of the high school kind of identified some kids,
Sure.
as opposed to that's our normal, the normal way to go about asking for volunteers.
I think it's two different things you're addressing. You're addressing the non-resident requirement, and you're addressing the fact that it could be a high school student. They live here, so it's different. They live here, but they go to school in Milwaukee. Is that right? There's two different issues.
Yeah.
Well, there's several issues about it. I mean, we're talking about the process, that it's a little simpler process to ask the high school to help identify high school students who would have the interest and would be willing to do it. And that's probably going to be a more successful way of recruiting high school students than to just open it up generally the way we do with general volunteer committees. So I'm reluctant to let go of that as the process for getting high school kids. And I think the number of high school kids, well, I don't know, I suspect it's a pretty small number of high school age kids who live here that go somewhere else. I don't know, half the schools.
Okay, so you got the two specific different issues.
Yeah, I'll move to defer to the next meeting if you give Tyler and President Rose an opportunity to discuss our issues.
And I'm glad to send back the full board. I did just have a question. So. Yes, Trustee McKay.
I would just like to express my opinion. I'd be happy to work with the process around it. And I don't think we don't have to stop asking the school district to recruit for us. But it would be not hard to add a phrase in our Shorewood today, that there are some commissions that accept student applicants. So I'd be happy to work with you around, that process. I don't know that it has to be in the ordinance, but I would hate to limit. Again, I just want it to be known that there are student members. I think all Shorewood students, district high school students, and then students who may attend other schools would be.
And I just expressed that I don't necessarily agree with having the students vote because they are, to me, ex officio. They're very similar to the school district representatives, and they might not be they don't have to be of minority class for that membership quota. I don't remember what we had, but it was like
4 to 7.
Maybe that's where I fall down, and I would like to have this conversation when we get into the ordinance for committees about ex officio. Sometimes they vote and sometimes they don't. Like the trustee liaison sometimes votes. Like, I don't know on the bid. I don't know if you vote or not. I don't know. But regardless, and then for the high school students to vote, they're not part of that 7 that made up that mix. So if they're 2 Caucasian students, it would throw off the mix that was required. So somehow, if we're going to have them be full-blown members, which I have no problem with, I just want to make sure that the ratio or whatever we had come up with originally is preserved as a Human Relations Commission. I don't think that a high school student is a minority or disabled, what do we call that, disadvantaged class. And so
I think how I wrote it, it's still 4 of 7 of the of the voting non-student members. Meaning that the 2 student members would not be part of that ratio.
I just don't understand that. They're either full-blown members that vote or you're not. So if you're going to utilize them, there needs to, they're part of the makeup. You're voting. I don't know how that, they have the full right to vote on something.
Correct.
So then they should be making up, they're part of that commission. Or they're an ex officio member and they don't have to be part of that ratio. But if you vote, you're a member. I mean, you're part of that makeup.
So if they are voting, you would support 5 of 9 instead of a 4 of 7 approach?
Sure. You know what I'm saying? The ratio is preserved, but the number changes, the total number changes. Okay, so any further comments? Otherwise, does anyone have?
Can I take a quick straw poll? Because to me, the one thing that's not clear is how we go about recruiting students. I kind of heard a mix of opinions between we do the same application we do for all students versus the high school. So Can I just ask for a show of hands?
Say that again? Say what the show of hands is for.
So the one would be for having the high school find our 2 students. The other option is they would have to apply through our typical volunteer.
It depends if they're a member or
process.
they're an ex officio to me. If they're ex officio, the high school can appoint whoever they want.
Well, this would be under the approach that they're voting members, so that's what's great.
Trustee
I
Bachus.
don't think they're necessarily, well, one is mutually exclusive, but you can be, the high school could still recommend, but I don't think that, I think that we still let them go through the application process, because especially if we're gonna open this up to other students, and some students might actually have interest in not necessarily be recommended by the administration, and that's not necessarily their own fault, they just might not be noticed or known by the administration.
Okay.
So it sounds like,
Any difference with the opinions?
well, I think I agree with Trustee Bachhorst. It sounds like, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that any organization can recommend, but they fill out an application. So if we had 4 other ones, if they're not guaranteed to get that spot, just like nobody else was guaranteed to get that spot. If there's 6 students that applied, 2 of them recommended, 4 of them weren't, but they came in their own accord, I've had no problem with that.
Okay.
I do think we should keep it at high school at the moment, but I'm open to more discussion on whether we should let any student, any
Okay.
age.
Okay. I'll keep it there.
Anyone have a different opinion on that?
No, okay. So it sounds like based on board direction, I'll set up a meeting with President Rozak, and then anyone else that wants to weigh in, feel free to email me and I can set up a meeting, and then I'll have it back either end of September or first meeting in October.
So we'll say the date of when we're going to meet if something, and if anyone wants to join us, just let us know, so we know if we have a quorum or not. But I'll send that email, we'll forward that email, just so you know what the 5 questions were. Okay. Anything further? With that, we will defer the item.
I have a motion, I don't have a second.
Okay, motion
I'll
fails.
second it.
Oh, wait. Oh, sorry, what was the motion here?
Defer.
Anyhow, yes, okay, we have a motion to defer, and a second by Trustee Warren. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion carries 7-0. Let's see what we have left. Nobody's gone to the bathroom yet. Comment report, yes.
Oh, we're done.
Oh, we're recording, okay. So item, wait, no, sorry. Reports of village officials. I won't get, mine's first, I won't get into anything specific. There's a handout on your chair. I apologize, I was one day late getting it typed up. Did attend the conference at the league for chief executives. It was just as good, if not better, this year than last year. Please pass that along, President Bachhorst. And I really get a lot out of them. I wanted the type up just because as we move forward with code of conduct and ethics, and they did a whole 2.5 hour session on it, a roundtable, kind of like with a panel, and there was some really good information. These are just the points that I highlighted, so please don't take it as there were not other points. They're directly from me of what I took notes on, but I'm sure you could ask the league if you wanted to get a summary or a report of the presentations or whatever. But I did want to provide you some, and I won't go over any, but they're very interesting. And I think that before we have that conversation, that it's good input from some of the other chief elected officials. That's my full report. I do have future agenda items, but does anyone, now it goes to village trustees. Trustee Amendment and Trustee Bachhorst.
I did attend the North Shore Fire Department. They got on their report that they were having a promotion ceremony and retirement ceremony. I was a little bit late, but I did attend because we always get the new police come and meet us and say hello, and I felt like guys, we should be represented with the fire service also, and I think it was appreciated that I was there. I also attended the school board's annual meeting last week or the week before. They have a preliminary budget and they won't have final budget numbers until October when they get final numbers from the state and have enrollment numbers from the third Friday, I believe. But they are looking at about a $900,000 levy increase, which is about 4.3% over what they levied last year.
Thank you. I just wanted to add that, and Trustee Maher might be reporting on this, but we did attend the employee recognition luncheon, and we gave out over 20 awards, and for 5, 10-year, and 20-year service. So it was very well attended, and so I don't know where those pictures are. Are they on the web? What do you do with those?
The pictures from the employee luncheon, we typically use in the newsletters that we do. I don't think that they've been released anywhere else.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, trustee, wait a minute, it was trustee Bachhorst and then trustee Maher.
I'll be quick. Happy first day of school, everyone. Also, to President Rosek's point about, and thanks for taking these notes. I did forward this a long time ago, but, and I believe I did, but there are a couple of articles in the past from the
Yes,
league
I'll get the
that
copies.
have a lot of this information. They do bring up the whole code of conduct and civility and code of ethics and stuff. In fact, I got to chair one of the ethics workshops last year at the annual conference, and it was quite astounding, so I would highly recommend that one. It's more for employees and staff because it's dealing a lot with theft in the workplace, but it's still really interesting just to find ways to make sure that you don't get even in a remotely similar situation as an elected official. And then, and to that point, the League of Wisconsin Municipalities Annual Conference is on the 23rd through the 25th of October in Green Bay. The the discounted rate will be ending soon, so if you're considering going.
If you would desire to attend, you're welcome to contact me and I'd be happy to register you.
I desire to be.
I will be attending.
Okay. Anything else?
No, oh, I'm sorry, no.
Okay, trustee Maher?
Yeah, on August 29th, the final town hall meeting on transportation was held. There's probably 15 to 20 people. Many other people that tend to be earlier to events. But it was a good discussion, and the consultant has finished their focus report, so they are now in the process of pulling that all together.
And will we get a summary of that
There will
before
be.
they go into the next phase of whatever, or is it all coming at the end? Because I
Well,
prefer phases.
Technical advisory committee is getting summaries, but they will be available.
That'd be great, just let us know when, thank you.
I also today ran into Jane Foley on the police commission, and they will be moving out of the village here shortly. She's a very strong victim advocate for domestic violence victims and other victims, and is very helpful in keeping the police, what our police officers, how they handle victims. So in the process of redoing that, I would encourage the board to really look for some really strong victim
I will
representatives.
do that. I think it's
Services are up.
Is that correct? Okay, thank you for that. I appreciate that background. And that's it for trustee, not Mark, trustee
Yeah.
Carpenter, Warren?
Oh, just thanks to throw in, Rebecca, I'll be in contact as well about the League of Municipalities Conference, and
Perfect.
see if I can attend as well.
Okay, does anyone else have a report? Alrighty, then we're gonna move on to, wait a minute, village manager.
So I included within your packet work plans and items that are listed out there. I know that we put a late time in the evening, so I want to offer.
Oh, just report, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I can defer, or I can, if anyone has questions, I'd be happy to review any of these items.
Would you like those in email? I know it's just a report, I'm sorry, I forgot we were in manager's report. So it's a report, did you want us to discuss it here, or do you want us to email you, or how would you like that?
Either way.
Okay. If you have any questions for tonight, if not, we have more, we can, depending on how many you get, you can share it with me, maybe we have if we're in a committee, if we had a lot, if there's just a few, if there's not everyone, whatever, maybe. Is that good? Okay, thank you so much. I didn't get a chance to read the fine print yet, but I promise I will. Items for future consideration, I have two, and I don't know if we have to make a motion, maybe I'll come prepared next time, but it's just minutes, as trustee Carpenter had expressed, because I think we talked about that before the last election, so it might be time, according to Chief Executive Council at the workshop, once there's a new election, you can bring up a discussion again. So, so that would be one, and I will do a quick write-up so that it's more formal, and the other one was just when do we engage the village attorney with volunteer committees? So I don't know where that'll fall, it's not that important, but at some point we should have that discussion. And I'll do a write-up for the next one and put it on the agenda. Anyone else? Nope, okay, so with that, do we have a motion to adjourn?
To adjourn.
Second.
A motion to adjourn and a second by trustee Maher. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Thank you.